example, right? Maybe the sugar component can be different. I don't know if you ever been to Europe, but if you go to Europe and you go, for example, like Austria was very famous for having very good pastry. You know, the pastry, the flavors is very intense. I don't know if you've been there, but if you go there to Germany, the flavor of chocolate, the flavor of I don't know, something sweet is really sweet. You know, but when you taste it in Taiwan, it's not that sweet. But the whole point of this is because that's the local taste, right? You understand? Even the bread, right? Even something basic as the bread. The bread you eat a baguette in Paris is not the same baguette you eat in Taiwan. I don't know why, but the different percentages they adjust to the local taste, right? You know, it's not the same thing, right? If you eat beef noodle soup in Taiwan, it cannot be the taste the same as the beef noodle soup, even though you eat it in Din Tai Fung in New York, right? It cannot be the same. It's just because they adjusted to the local taste, right? That doesn't make sense. You want your product to be accepted and loved by the people who live there. So you make some taste. So there's also maybe famous cuisines, right? We can think about the Indian cuisine, we can think about the Mexican cuisine, the American cuisine, or like this cannot be the same thing. I love, for example, Italian cuisine, but I never lived in Italy, and I don't know, maybe it would be better. I don't know if I go to Italy, but it would be different. That's the whole point. Even though maybe I went to a nice restaurant in Taiwan. But anyway, the idea is there's some uniqueness in these things, okay? That it'd be hard to replicate, and that is what you want to do because you want to adjust your product to the customers, right? Remember, the customer is always right. Okay, so the main idea of this article is the company must adapt, right? You need to adapt to their products and their marketing, right? Okay, so we have adaptation. For example, okay, here. Okay, so here we do. So we need to adapt. So for example, you can see Walmart, right? Actually, Walmart is a very good company, right? It's very profitable. It makes out millions of dollars. But if you see their history, actually, they failed in when they went abroad. Right? They tried to enter the German market, and they tried to enter the South Korean market, and they failed. Right? It's not because their CEOs are not, competitive, smart, right, or their business models is flawed, but the issue is they were not able to read, right? Do you understand? Even they're very successful, Walmart, right? To the Mexican, to the Canadian, to the Dominican, to the Puerto Rico, to the Latin American. But here we need to think that, but Latin America and Canada is nothing to do with the Germans, right? There are differences that I cannot tell them because I'm not, but the main idea is there's some in the formal and informal differences that their business model was not able to perform good there. And it's not because they didn't have a good marketing team or whatever team, right? It's just that there are some subtleties that didn't catch their customers. One example was telling me, because the other day I actually used this example often in my class, and I was talking that with my German student, and one of the people he was mentioning to me, part of the problem that he when Walmart tried to, you remember when Walmart was there, and he said that many German people complained about that the Walmart in Germany, they tried to pack their people's bags, You know this? Pack your bag. When you go to the supermarket, sometimes the clerk puts your products in the plastic bag. Okay? So he mentioned to me that the only thing that he recalls from this experience was that people complained that in the Walmart Germany that the Germans did not like was that the clerk helped the people pack their customers' bags. Just very curious, right? But anyway, so there's kind of like if you ask me, I would never believe that this would make a big issue, but for them it was, right? You understand? There are some ways that maybe different cultures, different ways, so they find it, he he was mentioning like he felt that like violation to their privacy, kind of these things. Maybe okay, so, who knows if it's right or wrong, but just give you an example. Another issue was Walmart tried to sell American footballs in Brazil. That was a pretty bad decision, right? In Brazil, they play football, right, but not US American football. So I don't know why they did this, but very funny, right? But so this they tried to do this thing. Who knows? Maybe he got fired, right? But they tried to sell American footballs in Brazil, where they don't play right. In Brazil, people don't care about American football. So even though it shows that they didn't understand their local culture. In other words, even though you're a very successful business, doesn't mean you need to succeed in all the business you do, because part of the success has to be how you adjust your strengths to the local culture, right? So if I want to do, okay, so this is another. So here another element about adaptation is Cemex, right? Cemex says from Latin America, what it learned it was that it beat the competition because it made the packing. Okay, actually, I don't know if you guys know, but cement normally what they used to sell like this, kind of like 100 pounds. 100 pounds. I don't know how much I don't know, but my country is pounds. So, but they sell like in big packs, and Cemex was the first country who actually tried to make it in smaller bags, because in Latin America. Nobody, you don't have maybe the enough purchasing power to buy the whole pack, so you just buy it smaller, presentations. And this was a way how it gained a lot of popularity and market share. And also, Cemex is very famous of trying to adapt many different business practices from all its acquisitions. And they also change their way they do business, right? So it's very interesting. They call it the Cemex way. That they actually every process they have, they put it in their system, and they try to run which production or which method is more efficient, and they're always adjusting it, and they don't keep like just because the Cemex Mexico is does it this way is the best. They say, oh, I'm gonna maybe, because remember, Cemex is a company who bought several, for example, bought many companies in Spain, Europe, and Latin America. So everywhere, all these companies that they bought, they tried to adjust the formula of success, right? So is this process good? The marketing and so on, and even people, right? Even though people, good companies have this way, very successful and very. But still, people can quit their jobs, right? And they also need to keep the talent. So it's not necessarily the adaptation. Not only has to do with processes, but also has to do also with people management, right? You think about also, for example, in India, many companies complain, right? Because of for example, there they have a very rich history of kind of like this of having syndicates. For example, also Sweden, right? Also, for example, give an example. Tesla had issues in Sweden, right? In Sweden is a place where many people are affiliated to a syndicate, right? It's more, the labor market is 87%. It has a affiliation to the syndicate. So when Tesla went there, and in America there's a Meta company, so the Americans have this thing's cool. So they have an issue. They think that these kind of like syndicates are inefficient, and they kind of like denied their ability to enter the syndicate, and as a result, they had a big local problems with the host country, with the workers and so on. They were even boycotted by different companies within Sweden. And Sweden is not it's not like a communist country or fascist country, right? But like I mentioned to you, so it is that they boycotted this company, Tesla, and the post office workers, they did not deliver the mail. They did not, for example, pick up their trash. Just to exercise pressure on the company to allow the workers to to have to be able to adopt enter the syndicate if they wanted to. Okay, so this is like I'm telling you, it's about the mindset. So the mindset is very special, you know, like you have a mindset, I have a mindset, everybody has a different mindset. And but the difference is between different cultures and different places are, you know, the gap is bigger, right? The further apart we are. And so maybe sometimes part of the success or not success could be about, you know, being able to adjust this kind of like products to this mindset. Like I mentioned to you, Tesla had a terrible time in Sweden because of this. You saw also Honda also had a terrible time in India, you know, even though in India. And imagine you're Honda, right? You're Honda, you produce motorcycles, you produce scooters, and the Indian market was really bad for them because they did not like the syndicate also. They did not like that they give up. It was more like a very vertical and the way that the management, and they had very big labor issues. It was on the news about so what I'm trying to tell you is that even though India, let's say for the motorcycle business is very key market, so I'm 100% sure deep in their hearts they wanted to do a good job, but they did not, you know, were not able to read those cultural differences well, and made India a terrible experience for the company. Even though I think the management really wanted to, but they just did not see the same. You know, Mark Twain has a very famous quote. He says that it's not what you don't know that gets you in trouble. It's what you think you know, but just ain't so. Okay, so so this is like the things I'm trying to tell you. So these companies, if you are, you know, have a top management team, you know, successful, with a lot of experience from several parts of the world, right? But you cannot do well there, right? So why is adaptation so hard? Because countries have different ways, right? Many ways, right? These are usually helpful. So we have cultural differences, right? We have the washing machine issues. We have the refrigerator issues. Simple, like the Germans like more space with meat. The Italians need special compartment for vegetables. You know, so even these basic things, right? Then we have administrative differences. You know, we have laws about, for example, I was mentioning to you about the syndicate, right? So syndicate is very famous in maybe India or Sweden, but not it's very low in the United States, right? Also, we have electricity, right? Even if they're floods, right? Then we have environmental, right? Things. We have protectionism. Okay. We have protectionism. Okay. So here, so all these kind of differences makes us a very special way to adjust our businesses. Then we have geographic, right? We have a physical distance. We have climate. We have terrain. Air conditioners need to be different, right? In hot places, not so much in cold ones. Clothes might be less common, where people can hang clothes outside, dry easily. Transport costs, right? Moving, for example, in America, for example, okay, I had an opportunity when I did my studies in Europe, for example, many people who did the PhD there, like for example, they went by bus. And actually, when they talked to the Americans, they were shocked that these people were actually able to travel by bus to their universities, because they had such a bad, you know, kind of like image, you know, public transportation in the United States, right? It's dangerous, right? But maybe this kind of idea of fear to the public transportation is something not very unique. Maybe Europe, right, where it's safe. But maybe if you are from, I don't know, in the United States, it's an issue, right? So that's why even though, you know, it doesn't make sense, but it is this way. But it's different. Okay. Just for example, okay, so we have here the transportation, right? We have also transportation. Then we have economic difference, right? We have wealthy people, you know, how much things cost or what's available. There also kind of like differences on the purchasing, I think. Okay, then we have level of income, right? Okay, so the Indian market, right, we have a different purchasing power with American, Europe, and so on. So this is also kind of like makes it more different needs, different concerns also, right? Maybe if you have so in India, the refrigerators need to be more simple, right? Now they have even smart refrigerators, right? So this is possibly right. There's also about reliable power, right? In developing countries, the electricity is not stable, so you need to have not so maybe stronger transistors maybe to support the shutdown of electricity often. Maybe for example, so this is something like this. Also about the electricity cost is something also you need to think about. Like for example, in Taiwan, you actually don't think much about electricity. I think it's very cheap. But for example, if you go to Europe, people really pay attention to the electricity bill. Turn off the light here, or because of the heating, especially during winter. It's something that in Taiwan we're not accustomed to, but because the price is not something we need to think about, right? But okay, so another way we have this. How do companies adapt? They make variations, right? So we have a two type of strategies. So number one, we do the variation is the obvious way to adapt. The most straightforward way to adapt simply by making different versions of your product or change your policies to fit local needs. Okay, so here Microsoft has to adapt Windows for languages to read left to right, like Hebrew, or long words like German. Icons also need to be culturally appropriate, kind of the language. Like some words maybe can mean bad things in bad words in different languages. So they need to tweak it, right? They need to tweak it. Even food, right? Make soap. They need to make hundreds of different versions of the product in different countries. Classic Coke. Here they put even the Coke. Look, even change the sweetness. Right? They said that Pringles doesn't do it though. Okay, that's very funny though. Okay, so the next one we need to focus. So instead of trying to be everything for everyone, everywhere, another approach is to focus on specific areas. This means deliberately limiting or to reduce the number of adaptations you need to make. So in other words, what we're trying to do is you just try to do one shoe, or maybe one shoe, for example, for a large group. Right? Then product focus, we have here, appliance Germany. Instead of making a kind of refrigerator for every market, here focus on compact, small refrigerators, like the US. The Brazilian compressor manufacturer, Embarco, focus on making lists of just one part. Refrigerator compressors has become a global leader in specific product. Here we can also think about that. Here the computer brands maybe like this, maybe imagine I cannot make for everybody, so I just focus on gaming computers, or I do computers for desktop or something like this. Right? So here we have a geographic focus. Here we think about, okay, we sell one type of Europe, we do the one product for maybe Europeans, right? Maybe we do a vertical focus, we do the supply chain. Then we have the segment focus, we think about Zara, right? Sells in many countries, and focus on fashion-sensitive consumers. These consumers tend to be more similar across countries than others, so Zara can use more centralized products and store designs globally. Here, if you see Zara actually introduces mild differences in different areas, but if you buy in Asia, you will see that maybe some like Chinese colors, and then Western ones. Small little differences maybe they should do. So anyway, firms look for opportunities to amp up their adaptation efforts because becoming more responsive to differences help them reduce the impact of protectionism, because you be more appealing, so maybe people will be willing to pay more money for you. Okay, so now the companies need to adapt. Okay, adaptation makes sense. Most users should not automatically put it above all else, because remember that this also increased their cost, right? Of And okay, then the next element is called aggregation. So here is, you just imagine we had the shoe example, right? So now we cannot have a one single shoe for every single thing, right? So here we can just try to put them in different categories, right? Where we can think about, okay, so I'm going to develop one product for Europe, right? And one product for this area, and try to, so it can give us the enough economies of scale to keep the cost kind of like low, right? Okay, so this is so we need to find like the correct combination. So aggregation here comes in when we find this kind of grouping by similar things, right? And this is what the kind of like the secret is. Do I need to do it by income? Do I need to do it by, like for example, Apple, right? Apple, give you an example, Apple just focuses on high end or middle high, right? Income consumers, right? They don't care about the others. So some companies just focus on these kind of areas, right? Just imagine Porsche or Bugatti or whatever, right? These companies, nobody's, you don't hear Louis Vuitton complaining that about the economy, right? They just focus on one type of segment, and that is what they will do. So this is also kind of like a different strategies on how to position yourself, but not everybody needs to this way. So anyway, so you can. So by grouping, companies can achieve economies of scale. This is a fancy way of saying the more you produce one thing, the cheaper one individual item becomes to make. So this is like, for example, you want they do by regions normally. So we would normally they say the European region. Normally we have one product for Asia, right? Normally in Asia they divide it in two. Normally they would say China and Taiwan, and not the other ones is the rest of Asia. Then America, right? Normally in the American market, you will also include South America, right? But that's what I'm saying. But they make one product for the whole area. They don't do it by individual countries. So we need to remember that they are kind of like this, kind of like a framework, the geographic. Okay, so why region is important? Because if we divide it by regions, normally we would assume, right, that there's some cultural, administrative, and economic similarities the closer they are. And that is why normally we say by region, right? Normally we say like Middle East, right? Or we will say Africa, or we will say Asia, or we say America. Okay, obviously it's an oversimplification, but we will try to gather that they have more in common within them than if we go, for example, Latin America and Europe, right? It's bigger. The cultural differences between somebody from South America and a person from United States and Germany, we will assume that they have maybe more similarities if they are from the same region, right? Okay, so these things helps us to achieve these kind of things. And also, this is also kind of like expressed, right, by concrete examples. We have the European Union, right? So there is a more exchange of ideas, flow of people, right? So for example, in Europe, many people travel around, right? Especially nowadays with Erasmus programs and stuff like this, European funds. So many people, like when I studied there, many people went to, I don't know, Moldova, all these kind of places that are normally, exchange, right? So when I go there, I learn something new, I leave something from my country, my way of thinking, my way of doing, I share it with the people of Moldova, and then I bring something from Moldova back to my country, right? So everything is like less big. Right? That is why the differences are less. Also, we see also the NAFTA, right? So we see many similar things between the Canadians and the Americans and the Mexicans. Maybe they have more in common between them than maybe the United States and Mexico have more things in common than Mexico and Brazil, right? Because of the distance, because of the flow of people, right? Because since you're very close, like in the movies, right? Everybody who says, let's go to Cancun, right? And go to Mexico, right? If you're in the United States. But you will not go so much to go to Brazil, right? Brazil is very far away from America, so most likely the exchange of ideas and things are a little bit harder. Then we have mentioned to you that so companies need to be smart and need to develop these kind of strategies to find these things. Like there is no kind of like one rule, but they need to find these similarities, and this is the challenge that the countries need to do for, like, for example, to combat globalization. So one good example is Toyota, right? Toyota is one company that in the 1980s, many people complained about their ability to, that they were importing too many cars to America. What did Toyota do? They said, okay, Americans are complaining that we are making too many, they are importing too many Japanese cars. Okay, so we're gonna build in America. So actually, this was a way how Toyota actually became very important in the United States, and it doesn't have so many these issues. That is one of the reasons, right, that now that with Trump, right, TSMC, Samsung, and all these companies are trying to build factories in the United States in order to kind of like have less troubles with the administration, right? This is the strategy forward. Okay, so this is also the issue. So the United States so now, and Toyota is now a very small company, right? It's the biggest car manufacturer, very profitable one, right? Okay, so this is so there are some economic rationales that won't go away because of the globalization, right? So we still need to do. So the third element companies need to think about is the arbitrage. And the arbitrage is that we need to find things that are so special. So the example I put here is that if a candy, right? So the main sense is if the candy is very cheap, right, in your town, but it sells very high price in a different city, is because it's hard to find there, right? So what do? You buy it cheap and you go sell it expensive, right? So this is what Taiwan does, right? Taiwan, what does it do? Right? Taiwan we can build computers very cheap, right? And that's why we sell it to America, right? Because we can have this difference in pricing, and that is why it's this way. So in the world global business, arbitrage means exploring differences between countries and opportunities. So arbitrage here can also be for different reasons, right? Sometimes it's because of the currency, right? So even imagine that the currency goes up and down, right? So if there's a depreciation of some costs, then it makes maybe sense to go to buy there, right? Just imagine if there's some crisis somewhere, right? The currency is very cheap, so you go there, you buy something cheap, and then you resell it somewhere else. Right? This is happens normally in crisis. You can also do this to solve many problems. Right? Normally people do it with job. Just imagine yourself in India, right? Maybe because in India there are many engineers, so maybe the hourly wage of the Indian engineers or the Indian doctors, because please remember that India is very famous for two specific industries. Number one is the IT, right? And number two is the pharmaceutical, right? Also. So there are many engineers and many doctors, right? So maybe because there's abundant, that many, you need to think also that, for example, the United States, for example, has a very big issue that doesn't produce many engineers and many doctors, right? So this is also the issue about scarcity, okay? That is why, for example, when there was talking about the visa, I don't know if you heard about the case, if you read the news that America was putting, increasing the cost of hiring of these foreign national visas for these workers. They will impact their kind of like industries, right? Because they say that they don't have enough talent, right? So especially in this kind of like industries that are very special, just imagine if you are, just give an example, imagine I am an AI company, right? Just imagine yourself, you're an AI company. So if my company is AI and I go to Silicon Valley, maybe there are many engineers, right? So maybe there the price would be pretty cheap to find these kind of engineers. But if I go somewhere else, maybe in other parts of America, let's say if I go to, let's say, I don't know, let's say I go to, let's say Germany. Maybe in Germany there are not so many AI engineers, so you will expect to pay a premium for this issue. It's about scarcity. So in arbitrage, you will try to find this kind of like difference in pricing, and the market will adjust itself. Right? Okay, so the globalization is about producing where the most is cost effective, sourcing capital from where the cheapest and selling where it's most profitable. That's arbitrage in a nutshell, right? So here, arbitrage also was done. For example, Cemex was able to borrow, right? You bought a Spanish company and was able to get these cheap loans from Europe, right? And since it was their headquarters was in Mexico, the competitors used to pay very high taxes, high premium on the loans. Because you need to think about developing countries, the financial system is not that developed, and there are a lot of risks. As a result, the interest rate is very high. So that is also an issue. So here we just think about yourself. If you will charge more if you lend money to somebody who is less likely to pay, right? So this is why you will charge more about the interest rate. So then we have key ideas of arbitrage is we need to exploit the differences. Okay? There can be cultural, administrative, geographic, economic differences between countries as a way to gain advantage. We need to think about absolute terms, making sense of things cheaper by doing more of the same thing, like aggregation. Arbitrage aims to find the absolute cheapest and absolute best place for each part of the business. That is why, for example, different countries kind of like divide the production. Like for example, imagine you're Asus, right? You will produce some consumer products in some certain markets and some industrial products for some others, right? So you will kind of divide the production even in different areas. You don't put everything together where it makes more sense. Normally they will do it depending on the area. So that's one way. There's also difference in opportunities like adaptation, where arbitrage treats differences as a chance to make money. So here we also okay. So Walmart, for example, did an arbitrage. So how did it do? Walmart became rich by buying cheap in Asia. Right? They tried to gather around. They had a very successful strategy. But the main idea of the success of Walmart was to buy cheap from the Chinese manufacturers, right? And they sold that into America, where so this is a arbitrage, right? You buy cheap, you sell high. That's the basic idea, right? Just imagine the current situation. Walmart. This is their kind of like global strategies building stores all around the world. They do thousands of international stores, make money from them, but the article points out that Walmart makes even more money from arbitrage, especially buying cheap goods from China. This is why, for example, when this thing entered this tariffs, Walmart was one of the companies who get hit a lot because a lot of their products are made in China. And this will think about that maybe some company, their products won't sell as good as before, right? So it will probably be a big challenge for companies if this, and also maybe could represent an opportunity for other producers, right? Just imagine. So if now the Chinese will not be able to be so good, maybe they will try other brands, right? Maybe they will try Vietnamese brands or Indonesian brands or whatever. But anyway, so they will probably, we don't know if they'll be able to keep that business model. But they are, in 2004, as an example, they bought $18 billion worth of products from China. So and they were making a gross profit around between 3 to 8%. They were making a profit. So they actually Walmart is a very good case that actually part of their success was also not only by buying the cheapest in China and selling them to a point profit in the United States, was about opening the stores in other, exploiting difference in manufacturing costs in the United States. Cost actually this Walmart made its fortune because they focus on, especially they developed the regional strategy was they build in small towns. So in small towns, they build kind of like these factories, these kind of like huge wholesalers, where the profit margin was bigger than the other, where the traditional wholesalers didn't have any interest. So they were able to exploit not only the increase kind of like market share, because the profitability will change, right? Just imagine the profitability in the big cities was maybe 3%, but in the small cities or small towns, it was maybe 8 to 11%. So that is why it was able to grow so rapidly and also fast all over America, because it was able to exploit that element. And progressively, the competitors caught up to this strategy, and because in the big cities, the opportunity, the probability is very marginal, it's very limited. And also, they focus also on very interesting is that they also focus on products that have a high rotation. So they also focus on what we were telling you about the adaptability, right? They don't like the variety is not very extensive for Walmart. They have a few products, but those products will be trying to be kind of like the middle ground, so they just sell a lot, and that is why they're able to get those special prices. Remember about your supplier, right? So if they order 1,000 washing machines, is better than than 200 of each, because they have more negotiating power with the suppliers to push for these kind of like margins and have a high probability. So this is why the Walmart was made itself so famous, right? Because they were able to give enough variety, but at the same time keep the cost down. So arbitrage is not just finding cheap materials; it can happen all across the case you mentioned. Cultural. This is about leveraging the good image and reputation of a particular country or culture. So here, for example, is very famous, right? Like if you ever buy perfume, it normally says perfume in Paris, right? Or in France, so because it's a very famous brands out there, like Dior, or Louis Vuitton, or all this. So so there's some arbitrage also in the expensive area, right? Like for example, if you buy something of leather, you will probably, if it's Italian, right? Italy is very famous to make high-end leather products, right? Like Bottega, so big leather products. French is normally for perfumes and wines. Even like the region, right? Champagne, right? The Champagne region is only sparkling wine made in that area are entitled to have this name. So here is we have also arbitrage, because we can charge more just by saying that they're French, right? And then we have also, for example, America, right? America is very famous to have this fast food chain. So many people, can gain a competitive edge or can price more because they have that American flavor, right? Just imagine yourself. You buy a burger or you buy a burger from Fridays, right? This is true American, flavor. That's why we can charge you more, and so on. So sometimes the arbitrage doesn't necessarily mean you need to go cheap. It just means like you need to have a concept, right? Where you're gonna exploit, you're gonna gain this advantage for your business, and so on. So we need to think about this. So there's this kind of like examples. Uh, then, then we have an administrative arbitrage that involves taking different laws, right? Like, give you an example, United States is a very famous, I don't know if you ever seen this, but in the movies, I don't know if you ever watched it is a very famous kind of like series called Narcos. I don't know if anybody seen this movie. Okay, in that series, they try to catch, the drug lord kingpin because part of his money is located in a very special place in the United States. It's called Delaware. You know Delaware? Delaware is a fiscal paradise within the United States. So, actually, most of the Fortune 500 companies have a legal eyes, they have the paperwork done there because they pay their taxes. So, like I said, so not only Fortune 500 companies use Delaware as a way to put their companies, to have their paperwork, but also even the famous narcs in the movies, right? This is because they also need to pay taxes, right? They also need to hide the money, so they also put it there, right? So this is a tax haven, right? So like for example, give an example, Panama, right? So the Panama Papers. I don't know if you also see this or before the Fed. Switzerland and so on, right? So these kind of places, people go there to hide their money, but so they also kind of like they have the arbitrage, right? Because they compete with other places. Say, in Europe, you have a very good example, right? Where do most IT companies open their HQ in Europe? Where? Anybody? Our friends from France. Where do normal companies, IT companies, have Google, Amazon? Where do they have their HQ? Ireland. Why is this? Because Ireland has the lowest tax, right, in the EU, right? That is why people go there. Okay, and they have their HQ in UK, in Ireland. They can, go do business everywhere in the EU, and they just pay lower tax rates in Ireland. Right? That was the biggest scandal, right? That Google did not, pay despite the huge tax breaks it got, even though Ireland was defaulted on the debt and so on. So many people do that in Europe, in Asia. Where do people go there in Asia and open their companies? Taiwanese, where do they open their companies? Tell me. If you're Taiwanese, what do you do? If you're gonna make a company, where do you register your company? In Taiwan, or where do you go? Anybody? Okay, guys. So if you the big business in Asia, right? They do it in Hong Kong, right? They do it in Hong Kong because of tax. Right? Because if you do companies in Taiwan, you need to pay the 5% VAT, right? And then the government will make numbers with you at the end of the year. So for example, I have a Taiwanese company, and if I import something to sell to another customer, a Taiwanese customer in this case, I'll have to pay 5% of the net of the gross of that sale. So imagine how much must be my profit margin. So if I sell, give you an example, her name is Isoto. If I'm gonna sell something to Isoto for the worth of 100 T, it means that I need to pay the taxes on that thing that I sold her 5%. So I give to the Taiwanese tax institution, right? And then at the end of the year, I make my, I file my income report, whatever, and then me and the government will make numbers, right? So they took, but beforehand, the government is gonna keep that 5% of my money for the whole year, right? Until we close the fiscal year. So that is why some companies don't do that, right? Because a lot of money is kind of like frozen, right? So that is why some. Anyway, so this is there's an element, but in Hong Kong, no, right? That's in Hong Kong. That is why it's famous for doing triangular trading, right? I can take Taiwanese goods, put it to Hong Kong, and then ship it to, let's say, Germany, and I pay 0% tax. So that is why it's very famous to do triangular trading. But if I do that to Taiwan, I cannot do that, right? Because if I do, imagine I buy something from Hong Kong, it comes to Taiwan, I pay the 5%, right? And then when I ship it back to Germany, the government will say, okay, good for you, you know. But they still, you know, they took this 5% cash. So that is why some countries develop this kind of scheme so they can be used for, you know, trading, right? So this is why it's very important for the business world Hong Kong, right? Many people use it like a way to to ship the goods from there to somewhere else, right? But if you do it through Taiwan, you need to pay the 5%, and the government will pay it to you later on. Okay. Even though so you can do this kind of like, there's some tax differences, okay? Some here we also the very famous Robert Murdoch News Corporation, right? Famously paid very low income taxes compared to the official tax rate of incomes like UK, United States. They did this by setting up subsidiaries in tax havens like the Cayman Islands. Okay, so the Cayman Islands are also very famous. Then we do like exploiting lax regulations. So some companies do this kind of arbitrage, like for example, when they want to, okay, give you an example, like Bangladesh. You know, Bangladesh is very famous for the textile industry. You know, there are many factories that make clothes there. And one of the problems is why people go there. You know, they have maybe, you know, they were very famous. I don't know if you remember, there was this case of an earthquake. You remember there was an earthquake a few years ago, and many people died. Okay, so number one, the regulations are very bad, right? So, and you know, like Sarah had a big backlash. I think it was H&M also. Had a big backlash because they did not actually hire, they did not have a direct business with the companies who were affected, but they had indirect, kind of like, they had intermediaries, right? So, in Bangladesh, for example, they, maybe bad work conditions. Maybe they had bad work conditions. They did not, treat their employees well, or there was child labor. They also kind of like in Bangladesh some issues about maybe the safety of the buildings. I think it was an earthquake, and then the buildings were not, anti-seismic, and many people died. So maybe this kind of like differences. You get tax regulations that can increase the cost, for the companies. And then also we think about that maybe in Vietnam, it's very famous, like for example, the shoe industry, right? So in the case for the shoe industry, maybe, in the shoe, there's a lot of plastics, right? So they need to maybe pour it back to the environment. Maybe there's a lot of ink, maybe the colors, right? So there's also toxic, right? So all the processing of this ink and this trash is also expensive, right? So if you have it, for example, the factory, let's say, I don't know, in the United States, right, they will need to spend more money to have the better safety standards for the environment. All this, maybe you need to, normally, kind of the same industries, normally they need to put these kind of filters, to go back again to the sewage water. So maybe in poor countries, the regulation is not that efficient and this kind of things. So that is also kind of another type of arbitrage that they kind of like exploit. So they save money. So turning to arbitrage, the opportunity for vertical multinationals to globalize on supply side rather than demand side have narrowed somewhat in recent years, but they still remain large. Even the rising prosperity of large emerging countries like the US GDP per capita is still 7 times of China, 30 times of India, differences in tax regimes across countries not go away either, but will continue to provide arbitrage opportunities. We can see, for example, Europe, many people go to Barcelona and they have the money in, what's that, Liechtenstein, right? Liechtenstein, right? Yeah, Liechtenstein and all these kind of places. So multinational coming out of emerging markets tend to have they start from advantages rooted in arbitrage, competing abroad on the basis of low cost at home. Right? This is something that all the companies do. I think that even Apple and this kind of companies, they don't have their business registries in the United States. Right? You also need to think about this. That is why, for example, their banking system is so developed. Like, for example, there's the other day, I like, for example, to gather data about who has the U.S. Treasury bonds. And actually, when you see about where do the national Treasury bonds, you will see that the fiscal paradises, they hold a lot of Treasury bonds, even compared to countries such as Germany. Like the Cayman Islands, I think, has more U.S. Treasury bonds than Germany. Just to give you an idea. So there's so much cash there that they just keep it there. So just that amount, and the money cannot be either way. So they need to invest it in something more safe. So this is opportunities for vertical multinationals to globalize supply side rather than demand side. That's what I said. Okay, so here we do examples for like General Electric, right? They talk about that even the General Electric, even though they have this kind of problems with globalization, right? But there are some processes that their strength in order to be in so many countries cannot be easily replicated, and just because the United States is retreating won't change very much, because their supply chain is worldwide, right? Worldwide, and even though there can be some adjustments, but the core strength of the business platform cannot be reduced to one place alone. General Electric still believes that localization strategy is best understood as one that remains core strength in aggregation, then toning it down the company's prior emphasis on arbitrage, and becoming more adaptive. Right? So here he says that because part of the big issue of this General Electric is about research and development. Understand? Research and development is not easily transferable. That is why, for example, many people are arguing about TSMC. Right? It's a big discussion because the core strength about the research and development they say is going to still be in Taiwan, but they still worry that the factory in the United States. But it's the research and development that keeps them competitive, right? That is the core strength. Like if you see, for example, that is how remember the products that they are going to launch in 5 years from now are the ones that are being studied and developed now, right? Because so that is why it's so critical. Okay, so then we have this Martin Reeves points out that in many cases companies are seeing bigger impacts from political and economic factors than competitive considerations. Those factors include Brexit-driven exchange rate movements, share price fluctuations in response to policy pronouncement, cost-saving investment plans in the light anticipated shift in trade policy. I would add to the list of NGOs the proliferation of social media and the increase of anti-globalization sentiment. So here, what they're saying to you that nowadays is more complex than these three strategies that we're talking about, because, for example, exchange rate, there are things that are being controlled by the government, right? So they can be done on purpose to keep your, for example, the currency low, or to, for example, China, for example, that was being arguably challenged by the United States that it controls its currency on purpose to keep it low, right? To keep it cheap. In this way, to produce and manufacture in China is more viable, more profitable than it would maybe otherwise would be. In Taiwan, for example, we see that normally, Taiwan, for example, if the currency, currency is something like political, that's what I'm trying to tell you. So if tomorrow the government wants to encourage exports, can play with the currency. And if it wants to discourage imports, it can also play with the currency. So what I'm saying is these are governmental tools that some countries manipulate, but countries like Taiwan are too small, but maybe kind of like China is the one maybe famous to do these kind of things. Maybe there's some examples maybe of countries who are facing economic difficulties. They are the most famous cases that they will kind of do this kind of like manipulation of this currency. But normally the market is the ones that free flow, right? So it doesn't this issue. Maybe a good example could be, okay, let's think about the war currently, right? After Russia invaded Ukraine, the currency went plummeted, right? It was maybe 60, like $51, 50 rubles, and then became like $140, $1, right? 140 rubles, $1. So these are kind of like political reasons that can, change drastically, and that is why they're talking about that. These are things that we need to think about. They're also kind of like policy, right? When Russia invaded Ukraine, right? Just imagine all the businesses that had money invested in Russia. They went bankrupt, right? Just imagine all the money that was lost by European firms and American firms that had investments in Russia, and the government said, hey, you are investing in Russia, you need to pull that money out. And I think that they calculate that Europe and the United States lost more than $300 billion on those moves. Because it's the government telling you, you cannot do this business. You cannot sell more German cars to Germany, to Russia, right? So there's some political issues that can really affect the probability of this thing. Normally, let's say maybe the Russian example is a bit harsh, but there's some degree of these things. Just imagine. I think maybe a good example is this Russia thing. Sometimes. Right, Donald Trump is the most famous one to also comment about this kind of like things because of political reasons. He says something and then he was, for example, he was mentioning that Apple should not manufacture in the United States, and then he also intervened when the tractor company, I think it was John Deere, wanted to move away the manufacturing plant away from the United States. Or Whirlpool wanted to manufacture washing machines in another country. So some politicians, do these kind of things that can really impact them. But because, like I said, it's this kind of like policy pronouncement because it can deny of the straight policy, right? And especially about social media. Another example could also be, the issue of the. A good example would be, I don't know if you know this motorcycle, Harley Davidson. Harley Davidson was a company who was very, very famous to be kind of like the type of vehicle that the Trump supporters like, and many people boycotted their brand because of this. Also, we have Elon Musk, right? You saw in the video, right? Many people are trying to harm the company just because of his political affiliations. So there are some issues about this anti-sentiment. So companies have portrayed in response to this development by a range of factors. First of all is that backlash globalization. Also is a part of backlash against big business. Also American business, right? So if you're an American brand, also their reputation of business is an all-time low. Here we do an example of the CEO of Uber. He had to quit his company, his involvement with the Trump administration in 2017 because people boycotted Uber because of his because he liked Donald Trump, and then people were angry at Donald Trump, so they undermined Uber, and so he had to quit. right? Then we had the example of Elon Musk also, right? He also got, people were actually burning their cars, right? People were even selling it on purpose, right? So road rage, terror spreads in Europe as leadership goes up in flames and vandals hit another attack in Trump Tower and Musk. So right, so many people even get vandalized by having a Tesla, right? Not here in Taiwan, right? But we're saying that even in Europe, many people are not liking, Tesla and so on. So this is also kind of like impacting the things that politics, can change the business decisions. Or normally, and actually this is pretty recent, right? Okay, so here, teacher, we didn't have break. We probably,
Or you just compress the time so we can convert it and also
I didn't have break. I think we did it okay. Because it's not, I will talk more about it. Anybody have any questions about the again?
Any question? Any question?
Yeah, the issue is, even though I prepare more material, but I think that people are tired.
So, Professor Dr. Oscar is like one of the international business professors. So, in the future, especially if you are from international business, you're most likely to will meet him. And of course, today we have a very good topic today about the tariff and how to compete in the middle of the how to say U.S. tariff, right? It's very phenomenal in the beginning of the year, especially even in Indonesia. We have like our president successfully consolidated from 32% and become 19%, but it's still high. It's still high, yeah, it's still high. And then of course, if the Professor Oscar asks you what is the impact, you need to know that the impact is everything's gonna be raise the price. Okay, that is very not good for any economical things. Okay, so please give applause to Professor Oscar for giving the presentation material today, especially for the very good topic about